Today's episode doesn't hold back. Susan Grau is an inspirational speaker, intuitive medium, grief healer, and podcast host. She's lost two of her brothers, her mom, and a childhood friend to suicide. She's also struggled with her own suicidal ideation. In this conversation, Susan shares practical tools for calming your nervous system, how to talk to someone who's grieving a suicide loss, what to do when suicidal thoughts creep in, and why the shame we carry around this topic is precisely what keeps us stuck. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
I am so glad that you're here. I just want to give a little quick background. I had seen you at a grief event maybe a month ago, and I love what you do, but I also, hearing your story, was like, oh my God. And then I made an appointment with you, and we ended up chatting more about suicide than about what I made the appointment with you for. But this was like, my dream was to have you on this podcast because you have so much to offer with what you do for a living, as well as what I'm here to do. I feel like is to bring awareness. And as we were speaking, we both felt that. So welcome again. I'm so happy that you're here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And I think what you're doing is amazing. It needs to be done.
Thank you. Can you share a little bit about who you lost and whatever details you feel called to share?
My first suicide was when I was 16 years old. I was a friend of mine, and he came up to play guitar with me, and his parents were out of town, and he was talking weird, but I was too young to really get that I was getting a message. And he taught me how to play his Gibson guitar, and I was all excited about that. And we had spent a lot of time together, and he went downstairs, and within hours he had died by suicide. And it was absolutely gut-wrenching. Nobody knew. I went down and knocked on the door a couple times, because I wanted to play more, and he didn't answer, and I just thought he was gone. And he was, but in a different kind of way.
When you said he talked funny, what does that mean or look like?
He was talking about life things. 16 years old, you don't really talk about, I wonder what death's like. And, do you feel sadness, Susan? That kind of thing. And, I had spent my whole life as a young woman up until 38 years old, actually, when it started to wane a little bit, wanting to leave the planet and die by suicide. I thought about every way I could do it. And I have to be honest, I felt I should have picked up on the energy of it. Of course, we can't know what we don't know. And I didn't know. But at the time, I felt a lot of guilt because I felt like I should have known. I should have felt that energy. And that was very traumatizing. It was very shocking. And I remember the one thing is that he wrote a note, and the only thing he put in the note is, please give Susan my Gibson guitar.
Oh.
And that never left me. That's the only thing he wrote in the note. And I didn't know I had that impact on him as a friend. I mean, we were friends. We weren't best friends. We were just friends. And so it was very overwhelming to have that happen, to have someone come in and display their energy and me not pick it up, knowing that I know what that energy feels like. So that was my first experience. My second experience, my uncle attempted suicide, and I loved him very much, and he was never the same. He destroyed his body. He shot himself in the stomach, and he destroyed his body because he didn't die. And then my third one was another friend who literally threw himself underneath a car on purpose. So as time went on, I was in my late 20s when my brother died by suicide. I was in my early 30s when my second older brother died by suicide. And then 17 years ago, I lost my mother to suicide.
How do you navigate that? I can't even...
You don't.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
It becomes part of the landscape of your life. You don't navigate it. You don't control suicide or loss, for that matter. It controls you. I tell people grief's in the corner doing push-ups, waiting for you to be vulnerable. and it will be there the rest of our journey. And it's getting stronger. When I say it's doing push-ups, it's getting stronger. And it's not to cause fright in people, but it is a truth, so that when you're in the grocery store 10 years later and you're picking up a can of beans and you burst into tears, that's it with its strength. You know, it
Mhm.
comes in out of nowhere, and you just have to allow that, and you navigate it in only in the way that you allow yourself to be true to who you are. So if I'm crying in the grocery store, I'm crying in the grocery store.
Yeah.
I don't try to cover it if that's any kind of navigation. But
No, I
it's not something that you go to, it comes to you, so there is nothing to navigate.
I guess what my thought was is, yeah, how do you navigate obviously the moment? And also, are you always on high alert that someone you know is going to try and take their own life?
Absolutely. So when my children are sad, the first thought that goes through my head. So you find yourself fixing people. You
Mm.
know, throughout my life journey, I mean, I'm 66 years old now, but I can tell you throughout my life journey, not now, but throughout my life journey, somebody would look depressed and I would start fixing them instantly. I became very codependent with people because I knew suicide was not just a word or a thought. It was a reality in my world, a strong reality. It wasn't just a one-time reality, which is also makes it a reality. You know, there's no measurement to the pain of suicide. I don't care if you've had 5 or you've had 20 or you've had 1. It's just a matter of going through it again and again. So we can't measure it. But I know for me, the loss made me very frightened that if somebody wasn't happy, they were going to die. And
Mm.
if somebody said to me, I just want to die, that for me was real. That wasn't just, I just want to die or I'm dead. You know, when people make jokes and they say
Yeah.
things like, I'm dead here, and they laugh, ha ha ha, or I'm going, you know, that kind of comments like that, and they're just being funny. To me, that brings that up. You know, there's things that just trigger me. And so I have to be honest with that. That won't stop. Like I had a very well-known grief therapist making a point of telling people, and I think we discussed this last week,
Mhm.
that they couldn't say committed suicide because the word committed was a negative connotation. Well, to me, it's not. You know, I guess it depends on who you're talking to. I commit to my animals. I commit to my marriage. I commit to my children. You know, I commit to my job. So to me, it doesn't have a negative connotation, but to many it does, and it seems to be insulting people. And my feeling about that's pretty strong. You know, I've been through enough suicides that I follow the lead of other people. So if somebody says to me, my son committed suicide, that's what we're going to be talking about, their son committing suicide. If they say they died by suicide, that's what we're going to be talking about, how they died by suicide, because that is honoring the person. And we have been shamed so much. People who have suicide, we feel the shame. You know, when I was writing my book, I was talking about how when I went into the suicides, I was talking about how I felt so uncomfortable writing it because I thought people were thinking how bad my family is. We must be so broken. We must have had so much trauma and all these other things and I realized it was me thinking it. You know, as I was writing the book, it's like I had those thoughts and feelings. But when you start correcting someone who has had this kind of trauma, it causes more trauma. And what it does is it shuts us down, and we're already on the defense. We're already having difficulty coming in and saying, you know, listen, I've got all these suicides, or even I have one. So there's a shame base behind it in some form that we have to work through. And until that time, certainly we don't need to be corrected. We're courageous. We should be told we're courageous, not get corrected for how we say it. And it became kind of a buzz thing. So it's a very strong area for me that I feel really strong. I mean, I feel really strongly about it. And I hope that people hear this that are in this field and stop doing that. And I'm coming from a place of understanding suicide, obviously, and what it does to us. And to put another shame on someone for how they word it is unacceptable. And
Unacceptable. You had said to me the other day that when we had this discussion that you're forgetting them when you're shaming and so worried about the actual words that you're missing
the
the deep
point.
part of the conversation.
Yes. So they're so focused on how you're saying it. And so here's an example of this. I was on a podcast right after I heard this gentleman talk, and it got in my head. And I was on a podcast and I said, my brother committed suicide. And I said, can you cut that out? Can you, he died by
Mm.
suicide. And I felt that shame come up in me and that panic that I was being incorrect politically. And I thought, oh my God, I have to speak out about this because it broke me out of what I was trying to get across and the importance of what I was saying into being shamed for how I said it. And it was so upsetting to me that I allowed this person in my head
Mhm.
enough that I did that to myself that I thought, and I'm a therapist and I talk about suicide all the time and I'm a medium. I deal with suicide all the time. I have to tell you that I was shocked at the response I had internally. And I realized that I really need to speak out about this because this is not okay to do this. If you're a professional in the field, maybe there's a boundary there, but just being and then again, still and yet, if you're a professional in the field and you've had suicides,
Yeah, what kind of a boundary do you, I mean,
well,
I
that's what I think they're talking about is that it insults people because they believe that committed is a bad word, meaning like you should go to prison, which that is one form of being committed to an asylum or being committed to prison, but you're also, again, committed to many things in our lives that are very positive things. So they've taken this one word and they've tweaked it to make everyone comfortable, but not everyone will be comfortable. So let's follow the lead of the person who has the loss, is my point. If you
Right.
are out there listening to this, I ask you, if your loved one or someone you know says, you know, I lost my husband to suicide, great. You say, oh, I see you've lost your husband to suicide. People always ask me, how do we speak to people who have suicide? We don't know how to talk to them. I'm going to give you this right now. If they say they committed suicide, then you say, I understand they committed suicide and I'm so sorry. Don't be afraid of the words they're using. Don't try to be politically correct because if you do that, you're missing the energy of the feels. And there is something behind that. When people are talking about this, they are feeling the experience again and again and again. And until they do extensive healing, it is triggering them the whole time.
don't you think that, I mean, it goes to what you were saying a few minutes ago, that there are so many things we cannot say that are not politically correct or whatever, that it feels like that, not even having to do with suicide only, just in general as a society, there are so many words that we can't say or were made wrong and whatever, which
Mhm.
I think messes with your mental health because you're constantly
Yeah.
doubting yourself and
Well, you
like,
can't be true in a conversation.
yeah.
You can't be true to who you are. And I refuse to allow that to happen to me, especially from someone who's never had a suicide in their lives.
Mhm.
I refuse to allow that because it took me years to be able to say the words and be real about it and be able to not hide from it because of the shame base that comes with suicide.
Yeah.
Much more so when I was younger than now. It's gotten better, but it's still there. You know, for me to tell people I was suicidal till I was 38 years old, there's a shame base behind that when you haven't healed. Now, I've done a lot of healing work, so I don't feel shame. I actually feel true to who I am. And still till this day, if I allow someone to make me feel like I'm not enough and that I did something wrong and that I'm bad or shaming me, I can go there. That is a go-to for me. It's almost like saying I can go to the grocery store. It became so common in my energy and in my world that it was like, I have an out. If I feel so horrible inside by the way the world is, I have an out. A lot of people, and it's not really an out, it's telling me I have an out. Kind of like I can eat ice cream if I want to, even though ice cream makes me sick, right?
Mhm.
And it's so
Yeah.
much more deeper than that, but it's an out, it's a go to.
Yeah.
So it's my stomping my foot. I don't have to feel this way if I don't want to. And then I make the decision, oh, but I can walk through this feeling and I'm going to.
What was the age of your first brother passing away?
I was 27 years old.
I can only imagine that as you were losing these close family members, that that go-to might have gotten stronger, or did,
I
you know,
did,
that,
did. It
yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I think it does when you see that someone you love has done that. It opens up some form of a pathway that, oh, we can do this. It can be done. Where you hear about suicide, you don't think that way. You just hear about it. But when
Mhm.
you've experienced it with someone you love and you see that they were here and they're not here, it becomes like almost a feeling of, I can do that too if I'm unhappy. And, unfortunately, we spend a great deal of our journey learning how to be happy and have joy because that's part of the journey. Pain's our greatest motivator for change and for expansion because we want out. So we're willing to do whatever it takes to get out, meaning, go through that pain and then we're trying to fix it because we want out of the pain. So it's the greatest motivator for our change. And so pain is very prevalent in our journey. So is joy. But, our experiences sometimes usurp that. So, I had a sister-in-law that died of brain cancer. And after that, my brother, who was married to her, she was very young. It was very, very devastating. He tried 4 times. The fifth time he succeeded. So, I was going through that too. So it's not just about, it's what happened, what's leading up to that. So
Yeah.
many parents and loved ones, they're waiting for the call. They're waiting for the trauma. They know something's wrong. They know that most of the time we're aware that somebody wants to die. They usually say it or they show it that they don't want to be here and or they've tried before. So we're already at hypervigilance. We're already in that space of this could happen anytime. So the phone rings at 10 o'clock at night and my whole gut turns. Till this day, when the phone rings at like 2 o'clock in the morning, my first go-to is, oh my God, someone's died.
Oh, that can't be
So,
good for your nervous system.
well, it's not. It's not. So
Right.
I have to work on that all the time. I have to tell myself, and because that phone's ringing doesn't mean someone's died. I have to separate. But our body has memory. We have body memory, and it's a
Mhm.
trigger. And we can work through some of these triggers, but some of them just are what they are. Suicide is a tremendous trauma. My uncle was murdered. And I have 2 friends that were murdered by a serial killer when I was young. And then I've had, people die of cancer and all these other forms of loss. The worst one I've been through, and I don't want to gauge it, but the worst response internally that I've had is the suicides.
What was the difference for you?
Abandonment, rejection. It didn't have to happen. They could have made a different
They
decision.
because I've really beat myself up over the word choice
They made a
and
choice to leave you.
like being vulnerable and putting it out here, and maybe people are going to have thoughts about it, and then I start, trying to self-regulate what I'm saying, and I don't want to have to do that. That's why I was like, are you saying that it's different because they chose to
Chose to leave
leave?
you.
Yeah.
There's abandonment.
Yeah, of
And
course.
rejection. And why didn't they call me? I could have stopped it. You see, I can't stop a murder. I don't know about it, right? But I can stop someone that's contemplating suicide in my mind. What I
Yes.
know today is if someone wants to die, they're going to die if they truly want that, no matter what we do. And that's the scariest part, isn't it? The loss of control. And we
Mhm.
have to recognize that we don't have that control. And that to me is the most frightening part of suicide is that I can't control it. Your body responds differently to it. Your body, mind, and spirit respond differently to suicide. It's not about it's worse or not. It's a different response system. So I'm on hypervigilance and I spent my life on hypervigilance, waiting, if somebody made, like I said, a comment that even seemed close to that they could do something like that. But I will tell you that because, I got so many phone calls about my brother over and over again trying. I knew this is what he wanted, but he fooled me the last time. He was happy and it fooled me. So a lot of times when people are getting prepared to die by suicide, they unfortunately, for us, not for them, but for us, they want to smooth things over and they appear to be very happy because they have now a solution. So now
Mhm.
they're at peace and they're happy. And we're thinking they're at peace and happy because, so now We don't know. And then we go through that with someone else that might have been suicidal and they're at peace and happy. And we think, oh my God, they're going to die, when actually they are at peace and happy and they're not wanting to die. We can't delineate. And so
Yeah.
we are always on hyper alert.
Do your kids understand, like, where you are in that way? So if you
No,
are I was gonna say, like, if
no.
you're yeah, like,
They
you
haven't
know
been through it, and
right.
and yes, it's their family members, but they were one of them
Yeah,
was
of
a baby
course.
in the, and when my mother left, my mother was sick. She had Parkinson's, and if she had spoken to us about it, it would have been very different. But your mother's your touchstone, so it doesn't matter. Either way, the loss was tremendous. But no, my children don't understand because they can't conceptualize any more than I could. So when my mother said to me, all the behaviors she had, she didn't talk about dying by suicide, but all the behaviors she had led me to believe she was going to do it, but I couldn't conceptualize it that day. I couldn't take it in. It was impossible. You can't even bring that into your system. It's so painfully difficult
Yeah.
and overwhelming. So I was denying it. I went to instant denial and didn't even know what I was denying, because she pretty much spelled it out. She just didn't say the words. So for my children to say something they can't conceptualize, they didn't live it. If I can't conceptualize it and I've lived it, I can imagine how difficult it is for them. So they can't even conceptualize my trauma.
Yeah, of course.
So they'll see someone else go through a suicide and go, oh my God, that poor person. I can't believe they went through that. And it's so horrible. And they're walking through it at that point. So it's real to them at that point. But looking at mine, they cannot conceptualize the depth of trauma that I have experienced from it, because it's one after the other after the other. They can't bring that into their system. So to them, it's like, oh, mom's just being mom, or mom's been through a lot. So, or whatever it is they say to themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents go through that. And then their friend will die, their friend will have a child or something that dies that way. And they're just all, oh my God, it's horrible. I feel so
'Cause it's
bad for them.
happening in real time.
Right.
Mhm.
Because they can't take it in.
Mhm.
So I couldn't take it in. I knew my brothers were suicidal. Obviously, one of them tried many times, and the other one told me.
Oh.
And my mother told me, but in a different way. But I couldn't ingest that. It wasn't real to me until it was.
You had shared the second brother to kill himself had seen the first brother, right? And that's gotta be traumatizing enough, like, where you can't unsee what you see?
Well, he didn't see him in body. He saw the remainder of his body, if I can say this. I have to be
Yes.
very careful how I say this.
Yeah, no, however he saw him, I
Parts
mean
of him.
yes,
I'll just say
yes,
it that way. Parts of him were still there.
yes.
Yes, it was extremely traumatic, and he wasn't able to talk about it because we were a denial family.
Mm,
I grew up with dysfunction and addiction. Hence, I'm a therapist in addiction also, or counselor. And unfortunately, that trauma, he was unable to talk about it. He just ingested it,
mm.
and, then lost his wife to cancer, brain cancer. He had 3 little children, and he just started taking that route.
Wow. I'm doing a workshop this weekend about the body and how trauma and all those things can really affect. We're a whole system. And so when hearing that your mom had Parkinson's, I can only imagine having, two of your children take their lives, that your body, man, it does something to the body. It,
Does.
yeah. Like,
Yeah. There's so much around this. It could be hours and hours and hours of conversation, because I really believe that if you haven't walked through the experience, the most important part is understanding for others the experience, at least on some level. But it's so hard to do because it's your worst nightmare. People backed away from all of us. They didn't want to talk to us about it. They didn't come around. They disappeared because it was their worst nightmare. For my
mhm.
mother's losing her children that way, that's another mother's worst nightmare. They want to stay away. We want to believe that something's wrong with the family and we need to be away from that family because, well, that wouldn't happen in my family, you see, because I have a good family. That's how we protect ourselves. It's really not
Yeah.
about cruelty at all. It's a form of protection.
Doesn't feel
So,
good on the receiving end of it, though.
no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that people know what to say, and I have grace for that because I don't know what to say,
That's what I've
you
said.
know?
Like, people say stupid shit, but and do things when someone's grieving, but I've done that. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know what to say. So I can't be judgy about someone else when, you know, I don't always know the right thing to say.
No, and the right thing to say for me is just, I'm here and to take action. So, what I mean by that is you don't ask someone, can I make you some food because they can't
Just make
think.
it.
You just make it. There's nothing you really can say wrong. They love to talk about their loved ones. I know I did, and most people I deal with, they love to talk about them in the good parts. So talking about them is very important. So there are things that you can do that make you supportive in some form, but there is no fixing it. And see, we're fix it people, all of us. Good people want to fix pain.
Yes.
And so, we want to say the right thing, and there is no right or wrong thing, except for, I will say, telling someone that God wanted them or needed them more is not the right thing to say. And having been on the other side, because I did have a near-death experience, I know they are in a better place, but I don't need to hear that when I'm grieving.
Yeah, of course. What would you say to somebody who may be listening who is contemplating?
You may not see tomorrow, but tomorrow will come regardless. And in that tomorrow can be a change. I know I went from one moment to the next. I want to say this, and this is going to sound guilty, and it's not. It's not about guilt. But you're not ridding yourself of the pain. You're transferring it to someone else.
Ain't that the truth?
And I want you to remember that if you are suicidal. I know that may not stop you, but I want you to look at the people you love and ask yourself, do you want them to carry this the rest of their journey? Because they will. Or do you want to get help? And there is help out there, much more so than there ever was. There isn't a stigma to suicide any longer for the person who's suicidal. There is to the family. People look at the family like, what's wrong with you as a parent that your child died that way? Your child wanted to leave the world. The people do that, but they don't do that to the person who's suicidal. I also want to mention that when I was on the other side, I did note that we do have to learn our lessons. And if we leave without learning those lessons, we may have to repeat some of them, which would be very hard. I don't want to do that. So one of the reasons that kept me here is I don't want to do that. I also want to say that's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I know those words are used a lot, but there is something more to that. Sometimes our feelings internally don't feel temporary, and they may not be. We have to work hard to remove ourselves from those feelings. Coming as a suicidal being who believed that I wanted to leave this planet, I can tell you that I realize now the gift I can be to this planet and to myself because I didn't leave.
What
So
shifted for you at 38?
knowing what I would leave my children with.
Mm.
Now, I think that it shifted for me long before that. I was fighting it because I know what I would leave behind. The pain is not gone. You're just picking it up and handing it to all the people you love. I used to say to myself, and many people that are suicidal say this to themselves, they'd be better off without me. I'm such a bummer. I always depress them. I always just, let me just tell you right now, from a person who's survived it, they are not better off without you. I would rather have my brother here fighting depression and being with me and telling me all his problems than leaving the planet. I would rather have my
Hear
mother
that.
here sick and getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and me having to take care of her and do everything that a person does that they love someone than have her leave the planet. So it does not make people feel better. It does not fix anything. And in fact, it complicates everything. And it takes from us. There's something inside my soul that will never be the same because of it. And each time it happened, something else left. So what I want to say to you out there, if you're suicidal, please call someone like me who understands both sides of the fence, or call someone, take an action that is not about harming yourself, because they will not be better off without you. They will be worse without you. And the pain is excruciating. There is nothing harder that I've been through. And again, I've been through a lot of loss, many different forms of loss. It is excruciating, much more so than any other loss I've been through. So I want to say to you, please, please pause and ask yourself, is there something, anything that I can reach out to change this process? The problem is, people think it's personal and it's not. And I understand that too, if you're out there suicidal or if you're a family that's been through it. They're not leaving you personally. They're leaving the pain. They don't want to leave the planet. We don't want to die. We want to be happy and we're not. We want to feel good inside and we're not. And we just want to get rid of the pain. That's all. We want the pain to go away.
So beautifully said and necessary. And I'm so glad how eloquently you put it. There is a lot of transfer of pain and the questions, the never ending questions that'll never be answered can also make you crazy.
They can. And, again, the answer here, I do want to say, is they don't want to leave you. They don't want to die. They want to be rid of their pain. That is the answer. So if you're someone who's lost someone to suicide, please know that. They didn't want to leave you. Even if they were mad at you, they didn't want to leave you and they didn't want to not be here on this planet. They wanted their pain to end and they wanted some form of control. When you have an argument with someone, which I see a lot, and then they end up dying by suicide, we take on that responsibility and we're not responsible for someone else's choices, number one. They're not leaving because of the argument. They're leaving because they want some form of control of the argument. And they don't know any other way because they're not healthy. They can't process it properly. And so they're going to that, maybe I'll show them, but they're not showing anything that they can't see through that. So you are not responsible for the decision they made. I had an argument with my brother before he died. And it was over the stupidest thing. He transferred my laundry out of a washing machine to put his in and put his in the dryer, left mine on top. It molded because it was in the garage, so I didn't see it. And I was so upset with him, and I got mad at him. And afterwards I thought, how could I have been mad at him? This is human stuff. I can't live my life wondering if he's going to kill himself. And I'm not going to say what I feel because they might die. I need to be true to who I am. And this is human stuff. We're going to have these conversations. But what I did is I took that became my focus instead of the trauma of the loss. That became my focus, how horrible I am, what a bad person I am, because I got mad at him over laundry and now he's dead. I know so many people out there can relate to what I just said. Over the smallest thing, we will replay it. And this is what that's about. Our central nervous system commands, it is created for closure. And we have no closure when someone dies by suicide. So we loop. Our brain takes that lack of closure and loops the information. So we think about it over and over and over until we're almost insane. That is a nervous system response. So you need to heal the part of your nervous system that has been in shock over this experience, because our nervous system goes into shock and trauma instantly. And you have to heal that, not your thinking. Your thinking will follow. I tell people you can't think your way into healing. You have to heal your way into right thinking. So we're always, and it's in anything. We can't think our way into right action. We have to act our way into right thinking. So we have to take actions that help heal that.
Do you have any recommendations for what can help calm the nervous system?
There are a lot of different things, and I will touch on that. So it's, meditation helps calm the nervous system, talking about it, calmly talking about it, crying, allowing yourself to emote the energy. See, we stuff. When my brother died, I had to be brave. I had to go tell my mother.
Oh.
And I was so harmed by it. It was the first one in our family. And I was so in shock that I didn't just go and say, Mom, Terry's dead. I'm so sorry. I said, Terry blew his head off.
Ay,
That's what I said to my mother because I was in so much shock.
of
I
course.
carried that
Mm,
pain and trauma. Now, I know this is traumatic for some of you hearing this, but I know some of you have also done that. You've just blurted it out because you didn't even know how to handle the agony of what you were experiencing. And I did that, and I kept telling myself, I did that to my mother. How could I do that to my mother? It wasn't about doing that to my mother. It was about my shock and trauma. So we say and do things in that moment that are so painfully difficult. When my mother died, I wasn't thinking, oh my God, my mother, and my mother survived for 4 days after she attempted suicide, and she died from all the complications. And my first thought was not, oh my God, my mother's dying. That was not my first thought. My first thought was completely different. I don't choose to share it, but it was a go-to to focus my energy somewhere else. It was really about, oh my God, I don't have to worry about this anymore. And among some other thoughts, it was a relief inside me for a moment because I couldn't fathom, I couldn't take in the fact that she had just done what she did. And so it was a way for me to refocus. People don't talk about that, but many people go through it because there's shame behind that, right? How horrible of me that my mother is dying from attempted suicide, and I'm thinking about I don't have to take care of her anymore and be exhausted because that was the only thing I could go to because I couldn't
course.
handle anything else. So I want to say to people out there, I'm very open about what truth is. And that was my truth at the time. I couldn't take it in. And so I had something to focus on. You may do that too. Please do not beat yourself up for that. That is a defense mechanism for survival. That's all that is. That doesn't mean you loved them any less and you wanted them
Of course.
gone. But we do that.
There,
Sometimes people laugh. Their central nervous system flips them into laughter and they feel so much shame and people are looking at them, how disgusting. They're laughing and someone just died by suicide. They're not laughing because they're happy. They're laughing because their system has to go to something and it has a response, a trauma response, and it may be laughter. And so I want to say that please don't judge your grief. It is not measurable and it has no business being judged no more than love. Please don't judge it. Just let it be what it is because I spent a lot of my life judging my grief.
mm,
And it was very traumatizing for me because I was going to come out on the short end if I was in judgment of myself. Anytime we judge ourselves, we're going to come out on the short end of the stick and we're going to be bad. And so please don't do that to yourself. Whatever you experience, whatever you feel, whatever you go to, whatever your thinking is, allow it and know that it's a defense mechanism for survival.
wow. And I'm sure that is going to help a lot of people. We've had a couple of moms in the last 2 episodes, and they each had a reaction right when they found out. And I think they were judging themselves on those reactions. So I
Mm.
think what you said is so healing and necessary to talk about because it's an easier thing than the trauma that's right in front of you. It's like, it's just,
It's the
oof.
same thing as someone dies from an illness and you're the one that's giving them their medication. So I'm a hospice worker. So I gave my family their medications. Well, when they first left, my first thought was, did I kill them? Did I over medicate them? No, they were dying. They were dying. And their body had the response to the medication. But that's what my first go-to was
Mm,
because I could focus on that and not
yeah.
just what I experienced and walked through with them for months. So I was traumatized because I've been through so much loss. I bravely volunteered to walk them through their death. And I was brave to do that because it triggered a lot of things in me, but I felt the need to help. And some people do that and they end up feeling regret for doing that because they think that they have to act tough and they can get through this. You don't have to act anyway. No way. When I get off this call, I may go in my room and cry because I'm talking about the loss of the people I love. I love them, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that I'm re-traumatized. It simply means I'm allowing my truth, my true emotions to come out. And I need that. So I don't know. I may not. I may go about my business and it might hit me 3 days later that I had this whole conversation about all the losses. And it may not hit me at all. I may be prepared for it. Whatever it is, it's okay.
Are you in therapy?
No, I'm a therapist. I
I know
was.
you're a therapist, but
I
I was just
was.
wondering, yeah,
Yeah,
because
I was. No, I'm a believer in short-term therapy. So I have a different belief system in therapeutic work. I believe that for me, going into therapy for 10 years and talking about it over and over and over and over did not help my central nervous system. In fact, it kept bringing it up again and up again and up again. So it didn't work for me. So I think suicide was a little different for me. Other things that I therapeutically went and healed, it didn't feel that way, but the suicides did. And I just felt like I was putting it I was like, I know I'm going to go today and talk about the suicide and how it affected me. And it was just like I was preparing a week before and then I'd be there the next week. So it wasn't helpful to me. EMDR is very helpful with suicide. I would suggest that for people that have suicide.
tapping
Um,
also helpful.
Tapping is very good for suicide. Meditation, again, is very good for walking through it. Talk, talk, talk. Don't shut down. Try to talk, even if it's just to say, I feel like I'm dying inside, because you do feel that way. Now, I have not lost a child to suicide. I've lost several children in utero. I was infertile, but I have not lost a child to suicide. And so I cannot speak on that in the way that a mother could or a father could. It is probably the roughest one I see. Can I help them heal themselves? Yes, but I don't speak on it as though I understand it.
Yeah.
I simply understand suicide. Everyone's grief is different.
Oh, ain't that the
So
truth?
we can have the same mother, and I will grieve differently when she dies than you do. So every parent grieves differently. The goal is to go to someone. I mean, I don't want to go to someone that has never been through a suicide to talk about suicide. Someone who has book study only. I don't. That's me. I don't want to go to someone that doesn't understand addiction if I'm an addict. I don't. I don't think they're going to understand me the same way. So for me, I always searched out people that had had the experience. The one thing I want to say about, going through all the loss that I've gone through and also feeling like leaving the planet myself when pain comes in is it's more of a go-to feeling. It's not that I want to die. And I want to reiterate that. I want out of the pain. And so when pain comes in, say someone rejects me, rejection is a big one for me. People say abandonment's big for them. Rejection is big for me. I can feel that creepy feeling coming in still till this day. And what I've learned to do is tell myself that people do what they do because of who they are. How I respond decides who I am. And in that response, I want to remind myself that I'm valuable, lovable, capable, and I am willing today. So I made a commitment when I was 38 years old because I would think about all the ways I could die. I mean, literally, and what it would feel like. And so I had true ideation, but I never acted on that. And I got close a couple times, and I remember I was about 37, 38 years old, and my second child came. We adopted our children. When I went through my infertilities is when it got worse, by the way. I wanted a family, and we went through so much trauma trying to create a family, and I was already in trauma. So it was just compiled trauma and grief, and it became very morbidly controlling of me. I don't know how else to say that. No one would know because I was strong, and I didn't talk about it. I started talking about it. I stopped being ashamed of it. I just would open my mouth and speak even though I felt ashamed, and the shame started to leave. But what I did is I committed to myself that regardless of what I go through, these children deserve to have me in their lives. And had I not had them, it would have been something else. But I committed to myself that I was going to make it through this journey and show myself I have hyper independence, but show myself that I could do anything that I choose to do. And that included dying if I chose to do it, but I can make a different choice. And then I said to myself every time it would come up, I can choose different for the moment. Tomorrow's going to come. I can make a decision tomorrow, but today at this moment, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to think that way because I never took the action completely. So I would tell myself, I'm not going to think that way. And before I knew it, my thinking was changing. So I was taking the actions. I stopped acting on the thoughts. I stopped, allowing myself to go down that road that wasn't yet paved. And I'd stop myself the minute it would start. And I'd say, I can think differently right now. I can do this differently. That was my action. And then my thinking would change. When I got busy, I would get better. And I started learning that, so I might just be scrubbing the toilet, literally, or doing the dishes. But the minute I got busy, my mindset would change. We can't think of two things at once. So I would do things like, this is going to sound silly, but I did it. I would say elephants are green. And it would make me kind of giggle a little bit because it's so stupid to say that, or elephants are pink or whatever and I would utilize that as getting my brain into a different mindset of thinking. So even though I was feeling pulled, it would pull me back. I also learned to stay where my feet are. So here's the most important one that I used. I would literally stay where my feet are. What am I doing right now? What am I wearing on my feet? Where is the floor? What color is the floor? Am I cooking spaghetti? Am I stirring the pot? Are my children in the other room? Am I listening to music? What am I doing right now, staying where my feet are in order to not project what I could do to myself to get out of
Ooh,
the
that's
pain?
a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's not just for suicidal ideation. It works for anxiety and depression and all the things like becoming present in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. That was big.
Yeah. It just brings me back to where I am right now. And where I am right now is doing something. So if I'm in bed, I get out of bed and I start moving my feet and I put my slippers on. I just do the next right thing. And that next right thing pulled me out. And what we do is we ruminate. So what I would do before that is I would say, well, let me see if I slice my wrists, how long would it take me to bleed completely out? And what would the tub look like? I would do that. I was ruminating on the thought pattern because I wanted an escape. I stopped that process by saying, well, right now I'm not in the tub. Right now I'm in bed and I need to get my butt out or I'll never make it to the tub. I'm going to put my slippers on and then I'm going to go brush my teeth because my mouth feels really dry. And then, of course, the dog needs to be fed before I make any decisions. So that's what I was doing.
Wow.
And before I knew it, and then I'd make a call. Now, a lot of people don't make a call. And I want to say this. And the reason they don't make a call is because they're ashamed of their thinking. If you are suicidal out there is no shame base to it. Get that out of your thinking process. There is no shame to being sad. There's no shame to losing people. There's no shame to suicide. It's not about shame. It's about trauma. There's an acronym for shame, and it should have already mastered everything. Well, let me tell you, you won't master everything till you're gone from this planet, right? So, don't even try. So stop the shame base. There's no reason for it. If you went out and partied the night before and you're in recovery and you know that you blew it, there's no need. Shame will not serve you. Guilt will not serve you. It does nothing to create a better circumstance. All it does is punish you. And don't you think you feel punished enough? Why add to it? So I stopped punishing myself for my thinking and my thought process, because what else would I think? I was indoctrinated to believe that suicide was an option, and it did become my option. And so then not only was I indoctrinated to it, but here I am now, it is an option because everyone's doing it. So I want to say this to these children out there too, and parents, please hear me. If you have an empathic child, or if you are an empathic child, you are going to feel everything. I was extremely empathic. What does empathic mean? It means you take in the energy around you. It means you can walk into a room and everything is you're feeling, feeling, feeling. I used to walk down the street, and because I was an abuse victim as a child, I would look over at the houses and I'd say, "What? I wonder if their dad's abusing them right now, or if someone's sexually assaulting this child, and I couldn't get it out of my head. I was so empathic. Or if I thought about animals and what they might be going through, I couldn't shake it. And so if you have a child that's empathic and cry, like, it, they'll go, "I know you're mad at me. I know you are." And they'll start crying. You're like, "I'm not mad at you. I know you are." They can feel it. Be honest with them. "Yes, I'm mad at you right now, and I won't be in 5 minutes." Be honest with them. Don't tell them what their perception is wrong, and support them understanding what empathic energy is. It is the most beautiful energy that exists on this planet. It is here because it's necessary to make the world a better place, but it also can be very destructive to the empath. Empaths have a tendency to lean into suicide or thoughts of suicide. So I want you to recognize and learn everything you can about empathic children, and also for yourself. If you are an empath, learn what that means, what that looks like, so that you can start regulating your energy and regulating your thought patterns. My emotions weren't regulated. And so I would suffer for weeks if somebody told me an animal was abused. And somebody might hear this on this call right now and start suffering. Start thinking, where are my feet? Go to where your feet are. Be present in the moment. Life is in session. Be present. And if you can bring yourself to that presence, you'll be able to get rid of this thought pattern that starts looping, because your central nervous system cannot do anything but loop it. So bring your central nervous system back to closure. Where am I? There's the closure.
Life is in session. That's
Be present.
amazing. Be present. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so, so, so much for all your valuable sharing. I hope that you'll come back and
I
see us
absolutely
again.
will. What you're doing, you're going to help so many people in an area that people don't want to talk about. And people
Thank you.
need to talk about it. And they need to hear about it. And they need to listen to it so that they don't have to experience it. And if
Yeah.
they have experienced it, so they don't feel alone and they have solutions. There's not enough of that out there. So
Well,
I'm
we're going to
really
change
proud of
that.
you.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you
you're
so
so welcome.
much. Where can people find you?
SusanGraw.com is my website. My book, Infinite Life, Infinite Lessons, talks all about the afterlife and suicide and how to heal grief and how to connect in to them and recognize when they're there. And that's about being present. And Susan Graw Official in all social media. I also have my Infinite.app, which is free to everyone. It's a brand new app, so it's going to have a few little glitches, but it's amazing. It helps you step into that spiritual aspect of yourself. It talks about dream interpretation, grief, manifesting, aura reading. Everything you can think of spiritual is in there. And I have the Infinite Soul Sanctuary, which is my subscription site where I teach once a month all about things like we just talked about.
Ooh, amazing. A beautiful soul. Thank you so, so, so much.
Thank you for having me. I
Thank
appreciate you.
you.